We'll give you the go-ahead in a second here.
Okay.
All right, you're live.
Okay, everyone, I just want to say thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us here. What I'm going to try to do is give a pretty condensed rundown of the Ithaca Police Department, what our structure is like, what our geographical boundaries are like, our budget. I have some statistical information, a look at our training, and things that are just really, really basic. So hopefully this will just kind of give an understanding of the functions that we perform, and then hopefully at the end I can answer any extra questions. So we're going to go with a PowerPoint here. And so here, the main things are we're going to hit on our organizational chart. First, we'll go with our geographical jurisdiction, just the areas that define the city proper that we patrol and we're responsible for. Again, budget breakdown, staffing. I also want to cover some of the things I didn't mention, which are like our professional standards investigations. And also I want to close with community outreach. So here, right here is our organizational chart. The chief of police position obviously is the person at the top, but underneath that falls two deputy chief positions. We have one who's a deputy chief of operations and another one a deputy chief of professional standards. I'm going to go into a little bit further along. I'll explain what they do. We have an executive assistant, and then off of operations, you'll see we have 3 lieutenants, and those lieutenants basically are the ones responsible for each of the 3 shifts that we divide our time between to provide coverage for the city. And I'll explain that also in detail further along in the presentation. In there, if you look a little further, we have some of our specialized units covered within there. Our tactical and negotiations commanders, our training sergeant. We have some administrative positions, and then also we have some civilian support staff. You'll see in there CSOs, that's community service officers. This is not the most current organizational chart because they really are working through the Department of Public Works, but they used to be housed within this building, so they stayed on our organizational chart. So that's really the only thing that's the most non-accurate to date. And then you'll see off to the far right, we have our Lieutenant of Investigations. He's the one who supervises and oversees the investigations unit. And again, I'm going to go over this in more detail as we move along. But right there, as you're looking at it, that is essentially the makeup of the City of Ithaca Police Department. So right here, this is our map of the City of Ithaca. And this really, this is our beat structure. We really have 4 main beats that we cover. And we have a couple of other ones that just staffing wise, we can't right now. And those are walking beats. But the main thing to keep in mind, the beats just really help delineate who's going to cover calls in what area. But when a high priority type of call or a serious call or a call that requires multiple people comes through, everyone goes. But again, the beat structures helpful to divide who answers calls in what area and to best divide our services throughout the city. Right here is a budget breakdown. So as we look at the budget, as you can see in the blue, the majority of any police budget is really geared toward salary and wages. That's the overwhelming majority of it. The other larger section of that, if you look, is the orange, and that's overtime. And again, a lot of the overtime coverage just holes within the coverage, just to make sure that we have appropriate staffing. Sometimes it's for specialized details. Sometimes it's for training purposes. But again, it just covers the shortages in staffing in some way or another. As you see, it all has further breakdown into travel and training, program funds, office supplies, uniforms, equipment, utilities and fuel, certain contracts like our substation that we lease an office in. And a lot of the things like where it says uniforms, travel and training and things of that nature, that all has a contractual component to it. So it's things we provide to the officers based upon contractual negotiations. So anyway, this is really the rundown from 2020 of the funding that we use to provide the police services to the entire city. As we move along, the next thing is our staffing and overview. And again, I really tried to make this in a way that it's super generic. But we're currently staffed. We have 61 officers. That's for me at authorized sworn positions. For me as the chief to the newest officer on field training. Currently 10 officers. They are on the roster, but they're not active for a variety of reasons. And those reasons can be anything from administrative leave to military, field training status, some sort of long-term disability. But they're counted in our numbers, but what we actively work with currently is 51. Actually right now it's I think around 48 because we had several officers get injured dealing with a violent arrestee. So that's all the officers that are responsible for patrol function. Or actually patrol and investigative and admin, but I'm going to break that down a little bit further. So if we look at it, we have 3 divisions: patrol, investigations, and administration. And out of that, some of these officers won't be on for a variety of reasons. They may be away at training, they may be on a vacation time, they may be sick, but that's the complement of the sworn members of the City of Ithaca Police Department. Our patrol division, as any police agency would be, is the backbone of that department because they're the ones that handle the calls as they come in, when they come in. The most important function is always going to be patrol. So we have 3 lines. We call it the A line, the B line, and the C line. A line, 7 a.m. is when they start, and or correction, A line starts at 11 a.m., 11 p.m. and ends at 7 a.m. B line is 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and C line 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And those are the 3 shifts that provide the coverage for 24/7 throughout the city. So originally, every one of those platoons was designed to have no less than 12 officers, and that also includes having 2 sergeants as a supervisor and 1 lieutenant. But because of our current staffing, they each have about 9 to 10, and one of the platoons only has 1 sergeant. So that's the staffing from a supervisory point of view. And during each 8-hour period, there's currently about 4 to 6 sworn officers that if we have the most, we might have 6, but generally lately it's been about 4 officers to cover. So that's really the makeup. We have A line, which the way it's written is there's a mistake in it. That should be 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I apologize for that. 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's the composition of our staffing. Investigative division, that's 6 investigators, and that also includes 1 lieutenant and 2 sergeants. And they deal with a variety of things, but the major things are felony crimes, major cases or high profile cases, sexual offenses, crimes against children, misdemeanor cases with special circumstances, and any evidence collection, storage, body cameras, things like that. That's all under the umbrella of the investigative division. Again, they also support the function of the patrol division, so they're another key component of the department. Next is the administrative division. So that's based upon me and 2 deputy chiefs. My job as the chief, as any chief, it's really to deal with the major strategic areas of planning, organizing, directing, reporting, budgeting, staffing, discipline. Our 2 deputy chiefs, we try to delineate their functions. So the senior deputy chief of operations, he's responsible for patrol function, records, use of force review, and scheduling. And the deputy chief of professional standards is responsible for overseeing the investigative division. He conducts all internal investigations. He has policy development under him and training oversight. So both of them together are key components in covering all administrative ends and helping me to, achieve the mission within the department. We also have support staff. The support staff, we have 8 members, and they help us in enormous ways. One's the executive assistant to the chiefs. She assists all of us in a variety of administrative ways. We have an accountant, a department timekeeper, an investigations division office assistant, and we have 4 data entry specialists and record staff. And they're all extremely key components of our operations here. I put some crime statistics up just to kind of show you where we are. When I do a year-end report, which is on our website, I do percentage change from the prior year, increase or decrease. These can all be found on the city's website. If you go to City of Ithaca, and then if you click on the link for the police department, and then at the there's a link there for year-end reports and budgets. And this report you can actually go into specific detail. But I might just put it here, just kind of give a showing of where we are. The top portion are the more violent crimes, and then it goes on to some of the property crimes and some of the lower level violations. Again, I won't take too much of our time here going over each one of them, but it can be found right on the city's website. I continue with it. I also do a conclusion of where our arrests are: felony arrests, misdemeanor arrests, violations, warrants, DWI arrests. Obviously, as is indicated there, I also like to do our total calls for service, the amount of motor vehicle accidents we go to, animal complaints, mental health calls, alarms, special details. It's really good because then you could see where your services are, where they're up, where they're down, and then you can track better and better allocate your resources. So again, they're on our website, and I do encourage people to take a look at them and just kind of have an understanding of what occurs here in the city of Ithaca. Did a training breakdown. I always like to do visuals with a pie chart because the pie chart really helps people see where a lot of our training goes. And if you look at the big 2 biggest sections, one is professional development, and the one is in-service training. And those are the 2 on the left and the right, and they really are the most large portions of where our training goes. But being a training-centric department is extremely important because it allows us to continue to evolve, to meet the needs of the community. We're doing a lot of things that I think people will be very happy to see we are doing. And it just allows us to provide the highest level of service to the community. So as we move along on that, I broke it down into sections. Cultural competency is huge, and we have a big section on that. And that's, as you see right there, it's some of the areas and the hours that we've trained is law enforcement and the transgender community, sexual harassment in service, crime scene management level 3, conflict management for law enforcement, diversity, inclusion for hiring, suicide prevention, intervention, postvention. There's just a series of trainings that all fall under that umbrella. Fair and impartial policing. We did 88 hours of that. Again, we're doing a lot that is part of our makeup of just how we do our training, because we, again, philosophically understand that training usually returns 10 times on a dollar. So the value is tremendous. Officer wellness is such an important component in policing right now. So we have a section for that. We have a section for our tactical training. We have a leadership-based training section, legal issues, and a technology-based. Then if you look at the bigger section is our professional development. And again, this is all in our year-end report as well. That's on that website. But it just shows, we do show the training and the amount of hours that go toward it. And this is more like the generic training that's not specific to any one of those categories. And then training for investigations, because that's key. And we actually had a lot of attrition within that unit. So we wanted to make sure that we really got them up to speed, and we have a lot of training that was dedicated to there. And then just general in-service training to make sure that we're staying fresh on all of our areas that the community would expect. And then here's a breakdown of just all of that training, and that training shows the hours. In just cultural competency, 518 hours were spent, 518 and a half hours actually. And when you look at all this in total, we have like 6,700 hours of in-service training. And I think it's hard to compare with other agencies because we really do a lot to make us the most well-rounded, and we're continually learning and continually evolving. But I'm proud to show that because we can look at it from year to year and say, well, okay, we only did 32 hours in technology base. We need to increase that. Okay, cultural competency, we really put a lot of emphasis, but let's do even more. So again, in the year-end, it's in the year-end report, but this is a good barometer of the officers that are making up the Ithaca Police Department. Use of force statistics is really important. If we go back, if you remember several slides back, I showed all the calls for service and arrests. We average around 20,000 calls for service per year, sometimes less, sometimes around 19,000. I think we're around 14,000 now for the year to date. But out of all those calls, we had 60 in 2019, 61 use of force incidents. The majority of them are just some sort of physical control technique. Someone's resistive and they're able to control the person and get them placed under arrest. We had 2 for chemical spray. For the electronic control device, which is the taser, we broke it down into pointing at someone and giving them commands to stop what they're doing and to comply, and 7 times that worked. Drive stun is a lower level where it doesn't actually deploy the probes into it, but it sends a electromuscular shock to have the person stop fighting or doing whatever it is they're doing, and then it's 2 actual deployments. We had 10 issues where a firearm was pointed. We had 1 issue of deadly physical force, and we had 1 issue where a less lethal device was used. And out of that 61, that was 2019. In 2020, we have had 39 times where physical control technique was required. And then if you, again, look down at those numbers, they're really, really low. And at the end, we're at 51. So with the volume of calls we go on, I think that, I think this is a good reflection of that de-escalation is being used all the time, and that quality tactics are being employed, that you're not seeing higher numbers in all these key categories. I think looking at these, we can easily see these numbers if we weren't doing de-escalation and weren't training so much, that these numbers can easily be much, much higher. So again, a compliment to the training, and it's why we invest so much in it. Professional standards. So we have the Deputy Chief of Professional Standards. When he looks at a case that comes in, it'll get 1 of 4 findings. It'll either get sustained, meaning the evidence was not sufficient to prove the allegation, the evidence was sufficient. Not sustained, the evidence was insufficient to either prove or disprove the allegation. Unfounded, meaning the allegation was false or devoid of fact. Or exonerated, the act occurred, but it was lawful and within policy. So those are really the findings. So here I have a breakdown from 2019. We had 19 total civilian complaints that came in. Out of them, 4 were unfounded, 2 were not sustained, 6 were sustained, 7 were exonerated. And so we look at the sustained ones. Those are the ones where whatever the allegation was proven to be accurate. 1 resulted in verbal counseling, 4 were written counseling, and 1 equaled the level of discipline. And that was based on 19,242 total calls for service. So I think that just really speaks to, the quality, that out of that 19,242 calls, there were 19 complaints made, and even out of those, 6 were sustained. We'd like to get it down to 0, and we work to that. Some of these complaints could be an officer was rude, they didn't follow up completely on their case, something small like that. It could be anything in that. And obviously, if it was something more serious, that would equal more of a serious consequence. If we look at 2020, where we are right now, we've only had 9. Again, we'd like to get that number to 0. 2 were unfounded, 1 was not sustained, 3 sustained, and 3 exonerated. Now, so if you look at the numbers, 1 was verbal counseling, 1 was written, and 1, even though it was sustained, there was no adverse action, because it was basically the officer didn't get to a call in a timely manner. He had a legitimate reason why, because he was dealing with another call. The complaint that came in was an accurate complaint, but we still did an investigation into it. So, that's something that's super important, that we always have a high regard for dealing with every complaint that comes in and properly investigating it. And again, that's out of 14,271 calls, 9 complaints. So again, I put that toward quality policing and training and oversight. If we look at outreach, I think outreach is really key, because we would like to even do more. A lot of hindrances toward outreach are based on resources and staffing. And then this year specifically from COVID, because we had a lot of things planned, and then COVID came in and it basically hindered our ability to move forward. But just in last year, we did our Cool Off with the Cops campaign, and that's where we went off to certain areas within the city, places that generally didn't see police for positive reasons, and handed out ice cream and ice pops. And I thought it was a great event. We had the National Night Out, where we paired with the Ithaca Housing Authority, and I thought that was great. It was raining, but we still had a good turnout. We went to 7 community meetings. We had 20 honor guard deployments, and that could be for funerals or for, events or retirements or a variety of things. We had 4 city festivals we've covered. We did the Cops, Kids, and Toys holiday campaign, where we make sure we get toys to needy families during the holiday season. We had 15 SWAT team and command vehicle demonstrations, which the kids really liked, and a lot of the community enjoyed seeing and learning. We did a traffic presentation, Special Olympics promotion. We did a torch run, Rotary meetings. You could read it obviously down there. Those are what we did for community outreach, and we do them because community outreach is a philosophy. It should never be just a box to check. We do station tours all the time. We want to do more of, we did a coffee with the cop toward the end of the year, and we would like to start getting much more of those. And that's just where people come and have coffee with the police and just talk and explain their concerns and what's on their mind. And I think it's really a great bridge builder. We also put an LGBTQ liaison out. The mayor asked if we had one within the department, and I said we did not. And he asked if we could, and I said yes. And so we have that, and that's basically a mission to foster positive relations with the LGBTQ community and the Ithaca Police Department. We have a liaison for that. It has to do with dialogue and promoting diversity and sensitivity training, and it's to encourage the respectful exchange of mutual support amongst the LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ officers. So in the areas of equal opportunity, recruitment, hiring, retention, discipline, promotion, and benefits. And we want to just create a really safe, secure environment. So our officer, Sergeant Arsayo, she does a great job with it. She was a commons officer in the past, so definitely well regarded in the community, and people are comfortable speaking to her. And again, that was a form of outreach that we created to have within the department. We also created a youth liaison. She's been out on family medical leave for a little bit, but basically the goal was just to have a point of contact within the department for youths. And we haven't really gotten to expand on that yet, but it's just something that we came up with as a way to help us connect with the community and bridge gaps. Again, and it was a method of outreach. And if we look at just some of our pictures, these are some of them, with Coffee with a Cop. We work with Cancer Resource Center, Cops, Kids, and Toys. We have a picture with one of our SWAT officers with local kids showing off one of our robots. We have a picture there with the Cool Off with the Cops, and then we also have one with a Coffee with the Cops. Again, these are just little snapshots to highlight some of the moments of outreach we've done. We also, some of these are station tours, officers on the commons, events, just trying to be able to connect with everyone as often as we can, and in as many situations as we can. And then we, here's some of our Santa Rappel. That's one of our SWAT officers. And, that's an example where we try to get out there at holiday time to show off our skills and give the kids and the community members something to look forward to. And that's pretty much who we are. And the logo on our cars says it all. Making a difference occurs by working together. It doesn't occur in a vacuum, and it doesn't occur by us simply being here to enforce laws. It has to do with us being part of a team setting and working together to a common end. And I think that's what we're here for right now. So I want to thank everybody for attending this. I know there's going to be questions, and I look forward to answering them. And there's our contact info. So let me just bring up our chat. Let's see. Does the IPBA speak for IPD? Well, the Police Benevolent Association, that's the group that represents all the officers except for the chiefs, me and the deputy chiefs. No, they're the voice of the officers as in a collective bargaining unit sense. But in terms of the voice of the department is different. They are reflecting their thoughts on key issues, and a lot of times they're similar, but they're reflective of a collective bargaining unit. There's a question here. Cortland Police has a very good program for mental health calls. Will IPD look at that system as a possible example? Absolutely. We'll look at everything, and we don't like to reinvent wheels. And if someone else is doing something better and that we can learn from, then we'll definitely do that. I think mental health is a very challenging dynamic in policing because we really would like to have mental health clinicians answering these and responding to these calls because they're the ones best suited. And if Cortland or anywhere is doing something that we're not and we can develop that into our system, then we would definitely like to. How does the police department plan to respond at the upcoming rally this weekend? What happens when events exceed 50-person limits? I put out a press release to really explain to people that we've always supported the right to peacefully demonstrate, but I urge people to not come if they're not going to be peaceful, if they have intents that are going to be conflict-based. And we do our best, with the resources we have. We try to coordinate with our counterparts at the Sheriff's Department and State Police. We've been doing this for 19 weeks, and the officers have done just an amazing job of being extremely measured, giving a lot of leeway, and then also keeping a line. And we made a couple of arrests last week because that line was crossed. So we do our best. It's extremely difficult to enforce the more than 50 feet in an area because, there's only so many of us and our resources hinder some of what we're going to be able to address. So we try to keep it toward acts of violence and vandalism. But again, we've done our best for quite a long time, and we'll continue to. Does the IPD serve no-knock warrants? IPD has, but a lot of times the IPD tries to do things in a much more strategic way. They try to use a strategy where they don't have to arrest the person at their home, and they can get them where they're not having to use that sort of methodology. Ithaca Police Department SWAT team is one of only 15 certified teams in the entire state of about 550 agencies. So everything they do is with a lot of skill behind it. So they always try to do things that's the path of least resistance. And they're actually a lot of times that they've made serious arrests of people that were potentially violent. They try to use another methodology where they're not necessarily going to have to use a no-knock warrant type technique. What types of things are you doing to repair community trust? So I go to every meeting to which I'm invited. I go and speak. I try to be very transparent. I present things that are factual and truthful. And even if it doesn't, highlight something that I want highlighted because it's, maybe we didn't do something perfectly, I still present that and share it because I think it's always important to be honest. And, I put out the year-end report so that we had an honest depiction of who we are as a department and that people can see where their taxes go and what the composition is of the department that serves them, what type of training we have, what type of calls we go to, what the crime rates are. And it took quite a while to put that together, but I knew that there was extreme value in it. I've updated the website so that the website is more interactive, that people can look at the website and then they can actually have an understanding of who IPD is. So whether it's things that I'm using technology to try to expand our reach and to connect with people, being open to answer the hard questions, going to meetings, being part of the solution. I think it's all in its aggregate is how we repair community trust. And we also look at where we can improve and admit that we're not perfect and admit that, we can always better ourselves. And I think this reform and re-envisioning is going to help us. We've been doing a lot of things toward that for many, many years, and we'll look at things that come from this. And if we could find areas that still require improvement, then we're going to be all about doing that. Why does IPD need a SWAT truck? So that truck, when it came on, it's a mobile command vehicle. And what it does is it gets the tactical officers, the SWAT officers, from where they are to where they need to be. It's not an armored vehicle. It's not protective in nature. It's just an extreme quality utility vehicle that serves as a command vehicle for communications and negotiations to get officers to the scene. We use it for shows and tours, for kids. And if something happens where we can't, we have to have an incident command center off site that provides for that. So it's a vehicle that serves a strong utility purpose, but it's not a tactical vehicle in that it's not armored, and it's serves a basic function. What do officers do in the time that they are not responding or investigating crimes? So the way our staffing is, a lot of times officers are going from call to call, following up on calls. When they do have what we call uncommitted time, it would go toward proactive policing to the best of their abilities, which would be routine patrol, property checks, vehicle and traffic enforcement, not necessarily to just write tickets, but to make sure that people are driving safely and obeying the traffic laws, looking for quality of life violations. Those are all the things we like to see officers do more of because it creates a higher quality of life. But when the staffing is lower and the call volume is higher, or the seriousness of the calls, the officers are spending more of the time than we'd like, just basically reacting to what comes their way. But when they do have downtime, it's really based on doing preventative policing. And that's why I'd like to have more officers and enjoy when we do have the downtime from responding to a call, because that's what they can do. Does IPD SWAT respond to calls outside the city? And if so, are those officers compensated by other agencies? We have mutual aid agreements. And what that allows is it allows when another agency in the county requests our help, we go and help. But that works for us too, because vice versa, when we need help, they come to us. So it's a shared service. And the truth is we're too small to be able to rely on ourselves for everything. So even if we're not getting compensated, in other ways we are, because when we have trouble, they come and they help us out. What recommendations would you have for other small cities across the US who are setting up civilian review boards or other accountability measures? I think just to make sure that, that the people who are on those boards are there for the reason of just trying to find truth and help with accountability and transparency, that they're seen as a viable tool for the community, so that they can feel that level of trust, and that the police departments buy into why they're there. When I was the deputy chief of professional standards, I used to meet with them monthly, and more often than not, they were able to help us demonstrate the accuracy of what we did and provide truthful information. And it was nice to have a third party substantiate what the officers did was correct. And if there was a finding, and most of them, it showed the officers had done a really good job. In anything where the finding found that there was something that needed to be adjusted, whether it's training or what have you, then we would use that as a good tool, because sometimes when you're looking at it yourself, you may miss something. So I would just say to set it up that it's people on there who are there for the right reasons, that look at things objectively, and that they work with the department to find ways to self-improve and help with accountability and transparency. Between professional development and in-service training, there's 4,076 hours. What specific things take up most of this training time? And in-service training, it depends. If I look at it, if we look at just specific training from the professional development side, I think it's important, and I keep this here regularly as a reference for me. You know, we look at professional development, dealing with fentanyl and officer safety and defensive tactics instructor school, you know, so the officers are better suited to arrest and control someone with using the least amount of force possible. We have traffic safety conferences, canine courses and canine handler, instructor development courses, pedestrian safety. There's conferences in here, property and evidence room management. And then when you look at in-service, that's making sure that just because an officer is trained in something one year, it doesn't stay fresh if we don't continually update it. So that could be, we have CPR, reality-based training, firearms training to make sure officers are proficient in something that could be so lethal, and there's a variety of that. So when you look at the year-end report, it'll show and break down all that, but it's just a very comprehensive section of trainings. Do you have any plans to ensure public safety during election season? Do you collaborate with other agencies to ensure voter safety? Yes to both. We had a meeting today and we're working on both of that, plans for it. Again, we do our best with our resources to try to strategize and have an approach that we can work to create the highest levels of public safety. You know, it's hard. No police agency can ever ensure safety, but we do everything we can to try to promote it. And we're working on that currently. And then just having, you know, some operational readiness. The officers here have been managing a lot of volatile situations for quite a long time. So again, it just becomes an extension of that and trying to do it in the best way possible. Are the 10 officers that are currently not working getting paid? How does that leave work? Yeah, contractually, they are getting paid either through workers' compensation or in some way they're getting paid. And that's stuff I don't control. That goes through the Human Resource Office and the City Attorney's Office. And how does that leave work? So yeah, so when they're there, obviously they're not here. So we have to supplement those positions with other officers, and oftentimes that requires overtime, or we don't have all the officers we'd want to cover the shift for the city for that 8-hour period. So we may be running with 3 or 4 officers versus 6 or 7, or, you know, and a lot of the ancillary units within the department have been absorbed back into patrol because, as I said at the beginning, the patrol is the backbone of any police agency. And because of that, we don't have ancillary units anymore. And, you know, those officers not being here affects how we can, you know, be proactive. And right now I see, you know, we're at around a little after 5. And I leave it open if there's more questions or anything else to expand on. I'm happy to. Is there a lot of other comments, but I think we can start to, yeah, so I'm going to get another couple questions sent to me and I'm going to answer them from our moderator. I think these have all been really, really good questions. Again, I do really encourage people, please go online and look at that year-end report. I was trying to look at it as I'm trying to talk to the screen, so I apologize if anything I wasn't able to expand on, but I'm trying to just kind of give the Reader's Digest version of it, but it's right on the city's website, and that's why I published it. So it's there for everyone to see, and each year we'll have another year-end report because I think it becomes a very good reflection of where we've been, where we're heading, you know, where the tax monies go. And so people know that we don't have 15 officers out at any one time, and that this is the amount of officers we have to do the job in front of us. And this is where our resources get dedicated. And this is our patrol structure. And to know that even though people are assigned to certain beats, when serious calls come, everyone goes. Hopefully some of the outreach people were able to connect with and see. And again, I'd love to do more outreach. I'd love to do outreach daily because I just think it's such an important concept of quality policing. And when you look at 21st century policing, we're really looking at fulfilling 6 pillars. And that's always the main one, always building legitimacy and trust. And we're working on education and training and social media and technology and community policing and crime reduction and oversight and policy and officer wellness and safety. And those are our pillars that we want to always make sure we're doing. And hopefully the year-end report kind of is reflective of that. And I think once we continue along with our reform and revisioning, I think we're going to even see more. We're going to highlight more of what we've done, and we'll find maybe new avenues that we can explore also with the resources we have. I have a question here that says there's various questions about the different types of responses to various political rallies. Can you describe how your office plans in response to different protests, rallies, gatherings? Awesome question. I like to treat every rally. I don't take sides. I look at one thing, and as the chief, that they're safe to the best of our abilities, and that we're looking to prevent violence and vandalism. We go out of our way to give extra leeway because these are times in which there's a lot of emotions, and we're understanding of that. And we've worked extremely hard for 19 weeks, and I think the officers have done just a unparalleled job in doing that. So we don't take sides. I put out a press release today asking, because I understand that there's more conflict expected for a rally this Saturday. And I implore people, if you want to demonstrate, to do it peacefully. And if you don't, then stay home, because that does nothing but create further problems and detracts from any cause that anyone's trying to bring positive attention to. So the way we do it is we use our resources to the best of our abilities. And, again, if I had 100 officers, I could do things maybe differently, and I can maybe guarantee a higher level of safety. And when I'm looking at, obviously, the numbers I've presented, and that's at the entire department, not at any one time, I'm limited. So I look for my counterparts with the Sheriff's Department and State Police and Cornell University, and we work together and try to find ways. But we basically try to give people their space to demonstrate, ask for them to do it peacefully, and when people cross that line, then those are the situations that we're going to do our best to address. Who determines the accuracy of a complaint? So when we get a complaint, one of the most important things is to let the evidence take you where it takes you and go from there. You don't base your opinion on what you know of somebody or what you think it is. And that's with any investigation. So when we investigate any sort of civilian complaint that comes in, we look at it at the facts. Then we look at body camera footage, radio calls, interview witnesses, interview the officer, and then come up with a finding. So the finding is never predetermined. It's based upon what information we're presented. And I think that's how it should always be. And if we're wrong, then there's, it's addressed. And if the person's complaining, sometimes they didn't have all the facts. Sometimes they're presenting something that's not truthful, and the body camera may show that. So again, we don't determine accuracy. We let the facts take us to where they take us, and we go from there. What percentage of calls that you receive do you think should be addressed by other agencies? Great question. I don't have a percentage. I will just say there's a significant amount of calls that we go to that aren't police functions, but we go to because oftentimes nobody else knows who can do it. And we've always been really good at being a catch-all for everything that there's no other answer for. And some of what I look at is, if we go to something, does that create a higher level of escalating it that we shouldn't be there for? And is our presence creating a problem? And are we suited to deal with it? I don't have an exact percentage, but I can tell you that there's a list of things that we deal with that we as a profession aren't properly equipped, whether it's mental health calls regarding homelessness or drug addiction. And we're always wanting to be able to help, but to be the primaries on that is just not practical with our resources and with our skills and abilities. And that's some of the things that hopefully will come through this reform movement, if we can find ways that police aren't the persons responding to things that others are better suited toward. And hopefully that'll come out. I will say that the Ithaca Police Department is a very, very much service-oriented department. And because of that, we're always doing things that are geared toward helping others, whether it's dealing with animal complaints or, dealing with, things that are maybe civil in nature, and we just want to, nobody else has a solution toward it. But we're trying to drift away from that because, one, our resources don't support it, and two, the problem with that is sometimes we're involved in things that don't turn out well. And then the question is, well, should we have been there as an entity in the first place? And if that answer is no, then we have to look, well, who would be better suited? So again, that's great. All really, really good questions. I just put out to our moderator, is there any other questions in the time we have? Just give it another couple of minutes. I would hate for any quality question. How do officers keep up on mental health? All right, I'll answer that two ways. If it's their own mental health, I try to work with doing as much as I can as a chief to look after their well-being. But a lot of what we're dealing with right now in policing is very, very inconsistent with their own mental health. The officers work long hours, double shifts often. They deal with so much abuse lately and berating, and it's been extremely challenging for me as a chief to keep their health well. But it's extremely important because when we look at quality control and of what we do, it's based on having an officer that's fresh, not fatigued, and that they're able to take care of themselves. And a lot of what's gone on lately has really significantly detracted from that. So I just try to keep tuned to it. I try to offer to the officers EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program, which gives them the ability to seek counseling. Again, I try not to bring on anybody who, and not I don't bring on anybody if they're not psychologically sound. The hiring process is quite lengthy, but as I go through it as a chief, if I have somebody who is not psychologically suited based upon the recommendations of the psychologist, I don't hire them. And that is important from the beginning. And then as they're going through their career, we try to make sure that they're getting time off, that we're giving them training, that we're looking for signs. We have a peer support group within the department and trainings that's gone with it. So those are things that are key. How they keep up on mental health in the community, if that's a separate question, is some of the trainings, and that training has been covered in the year-end report. And that's we have assist training, post and preventive suicide-based training. There's a series of mental health-based trainings that they go to, and that's to help the community. So that's really important. But again, I do want to reiterate the mental health of the officers is something that I really take seriously, and everything I do from a chief's perspective is not only to keep the safety of the community, but also the wellness of my officers. And a lot of what's gone on lately over the last 5 months has been very detrimental to both. So it is a key concern of mine as the chief. Are you working with any other community-based organizations to build capacity and structure for them to take over any calls IPD may not be suited for? I mean, we're always in contact with and conversations with Tompkins County Mental Health. We're looking at having other conversations with the county and local government to see who can do some of the things that we don't do. The sheriff's been really good in helping us deal with some things that we didn't have the capacity to, with like social distancing. So whether it's mental health or just other calls that we're not resourced for, or we lack the suitability, we do look for others that are maybe better for it. And that's an ongoing conversation. A lot of IPD officers come from military backgrounds. We have a handful that do, less so now. I think we're seeing it, and military backgrounds are good because people understand service and discipline and that sort of decorum and structure. But we also want people just from every different walk of life. We want people from diverse backgrounds, from every ethnic background and every race and religion and sexual orientation. And we want a department that's completely reflective of the community we serve. A lot of that is controlled sometimes too much against what we want because of civil service components that really dictate we have to hire within the top 3 of a civil service list. And if somebody is a really good candidate, but they're not reachable, then that eliminates our ability or strongly hinders our ability to get to them unless there's movement within the list. So that's kind of an expansion of the question. But we have several officers that are proud military veterans, and we look for that in those we hire for the reasons I stated, but we also look for diversity in a variety of other ways, just so that the department is, reflective of the communities we serve. Are any other questions in the chat? Okay, so any other questions that are in the chat, they're going to be archived, and the sheriff's going to do a similar presentation Thursday at 4:30, and hopefully he can answer them. I do want to say I think these questions were great. Please take some time to check out that year-end report. Take a look. It really shows a lot. If you look at our department's Facebook page, if you just scroll through the last year, it just kind of gives some snapshots of some of the outreach we've done. And again, I'm a huge proponent that outreach is key to our success and the community's success. And it's not a box to check. It's a philosophy. And I think the more we do that as an agency, the more we develop connections, build bridges, and make a better and safer community. I'll just wait from our moderators. Do we want to conclude and close the meeting at this time? Okay. All right. So everyone, I'm going to log off. Again, I want to thank you. This presentation will be archived also. So if there's anything you missed, you can go back and review that. And